I can read.
Just turn your computer on, hit close Zoom.
What happened to the Golden Gate Bridge, Carlos?
I'm fixing it.
I don't
It's
know
under
if you're a fan of
construction.
Grateful Dead, but it looks like the album cover to Dead Set.
Right? How you doing? Good morning.
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well.
Nice thing about Ian, you've lost some weight, man.
Yeah, I have. Thank
He
you.
looks good.
How much you dropped?
About 40 pounds this year.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
How old are you?
I turn 33 next week.
Yeah, dude, I'm 55. Now is the time to get ahead of it.
I'm trying.
Guys my
Hey,
age now,
Ian,
I
you've
mean,
also-
when I was 33, I try to stay in shape for, you know, the girls. Guys my age now are being told by their doctors, hey, lose weight or die.
All right, we'll give this a couple more minutes for everybody to start hopping on. We've got a steady increase in the participants, so that is very nice.
How many
Welcome,
registered,
everyone.
Ian?
Last I looked, we had 145 registered.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Damn it.
All right, we got about 2 more minutes here.
The attendees, that number keeps increasing every time I look up.
It does. I like it. A lot of people here. All right, so welcome everybody. While folks are still trickling in, there is a video I would like to show you all that gives you a good idea of how we're combating homelessness here in Kern County, and I think has some valuable content for everybody else, and that will give us a little time while folks are coming in. So please enjoy. This video is produced by our local Continuum of Care.
There's no one type of homeless person. There's no one thing that causes people to be homeless. So many different experiences of trauma nudge people into that dark place.
We say that the cause of homelessness is a lack of support, a lack of housing, and a lack of social networks or a safety net.
I'm Adam Clark. I am the Community Outreach Specialist at Flood Ministries. I think I went into engaging with people experiencing homelessness assuming that they were going to be volatile, extremely pessimistic, extremely broken, and I didn't find that to be true. The majority of people that I engaged with were just very thankful for me even acknowledging their presence, because society has dehumanized homelessness so much.
A lot of people just immediately associate homelessness with mental illness or addiction, which certainly there is that component amongst the unsheltered population. But there's also people falling into homelessness for the very first time. I'm Heather Kimmel. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at the Housing Authority of the County of Kern. Homelessness is complex And so there has to be many different approaches in solving it. So permanent supportive housing is one of those interventions. It is where you take a homeless individual directly from where they are, you place them into permanent housing, and then you wrap intensive services around them where they are, place-based services. Individuals aren't going to begin to heal or recover unless their basic needs are met: food, water, and shelter.
So typically in any given year, we have between 2,000 to about 2,200 folks who experience homelessness for the first time. And of that group, usually we would be seeing between 10 to 30% of those needing something like permanent supportive housing as their housing solution for them. My name is Anna Lavin, and I'm the Executive Director for the Bakersfield-Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative. So someone with a disability or an elderly person, or they may be experiencing mental health disorders, those folks are likely to need ongoing stability, ongoing services that help them address those needs. And that's exactly what permanent supportive housing does.
Permanent supportive housing provides people who've experienced homelessness sometimes the first opportunity to be in a safe space, to have security, when they sleep and when they act. And for a lot of people, that's the beginning process of healing, because if you don't feel safe in your environment, you're not going to be thinking about healing.
So it seems like the audio was not working there. Is that? Oh, you can hear clean. Okay, cool. I'll finish it up then.
You're going to be in fight or flight. One of the big components of getting housed as a homeless person is that relationship building practice, really, to build the person up to even be in a place where they can transition into a house.
The supportive service staff, the case managers, first understand what that person is dealing with, what their barriers are, what are the experiences that they have had that have led them to homelessness.
We're not just taking them and saying, hey, here's a house, deal with it, figure it out. We're saying, hey, here's a house, also what do you need help with? Whether it's mental health, whether it's substance abuse, basic things like me and you feel like doing laundry, stuff like that, we help them with that. My name is Will Triplett, and I am the Milestone Aftercare Supervisor. Any kind of life skill pretty much that they need help with is what we're here to assist them with.
First, just a safe haven. That's what I think permanent supportive housing is, a safe haven. They know this is a permanent place for them to stay. My name is Sharonda Matthews. I work for the Housing Authority of the County of Kern, and I'm a housing manager here for Milestone Union. I have a lot of interaction with the tenants on a daily basis. They may come in and needing, work order repairs done in their unit. They also come in sometimes to, pay rent and things like that.
In 90 days, we were able to lift up and convert 150 units to permanent supportive housing. And we've never seen that in our community before. We have an ongoing need. Folks become homeless all of the time. And so we continue to need to develop additional permanent supportive housing year after year in order to serve the community and the needs that we have.
Housing solves homelessness. And then when you have the support in place, it is a long-term solution and people don't experience it again. We have over a 90% success rate in the PSH model because it is place-based services where you are creating a home for somebody where they can live as long as they choose to. If we want to make the biggest impact in reducing homelessness in our community, PSH is the best way to stretch our dollars.
Being rejected and then being shown grace ignites this fire within them to want to thrive.
I would say that the quality of life definitely goes up. Participants waking up with a smile every day. And that sounds very small, but that is one of the biggest things for me coming here, because I know starting off with this place, we didn't have too many smiles.
So let's take your homeless neighbor who is suffering and make them a housed neighbor.
All right. I really love that video, and I especially love that it gave time for everybody to join us. So that is fantastic. So welcome everybody to the 4th Annual California Landlords Summit on Homelessness. My name is Ian Sharples. I am the Housing Services Program Manager for the Community Action Partnership of Kern. I started working on this project when I was still Executive Director for the Income Property Association of Kern. So I have a lot of love and respect for the landlords and property managers around here who are really making a difference on homelessness. You know, we started this program a couple of years ago because we found that there was a real need for people to, help by simply renting, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do today. We're really trying to demonstrate how these supportive services programs are able to not only transform lives, but to transform your business as well. So I like to say it's not just good for the clients, it's good for the community, and it's good for your business as well. So that video is really great because it highlights a couple of things that we're going to be talking about. We have panels discussing the supportive services that are available. We'll be hearing from them later on. And it also highlights the motel conversions that I think are one of the best avenues for improving and increasing the supply of housing that is available for people who are experiencing homelessness. Here in Kern County, we have a extremely low vacancy rate. So whereas in previous years, we were asking a lot for pledges of existing units, we're really trying to turn our focus now into increasing the number of units that are available. And so we have some speakers that are going to be speaking on that. We have coming up next, or first, is Greg Terzakis. He is the Senior Vice President from the California Apartment Association, Senior Vice President for Public Affairs. Greg Terzakis is charged with the overall management of the association in Central California and serves as its primary lobbyist in the region. Prior to joining CAA, he was the Public Affairs Manager for Granville Homes in Fresno, as well as a Senior Aide for San Joaquin County Supervisor and a partner in a political consulting and lobbying firm. Greg holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in government from the University of San Francisco. He's a great speaker, and well, I'm trying to flatter you, Greg, but I think you'll see that he has a wealth of knowledge. He's going to be speaking to us about some of the recent legislative changes in the California State Assembly, State Senate, and Governor's Office. So thank you, Greg. Please take it away.
Thank you, Ian. That video is a tough act to follow. I will do my best. It's great to be with all of you, even though it is virtual. I've been participating in this summit for quite a while. I think it's a really great summit. It's enlightened work, and I want to thank Ian and Marty for putting it on. It's been a tough couple of years for our industry and for our country. The coronavirus is a once-in-a-century pandemic that's upended our way of life. It's been incredibly challenging to our country, particularly for the 681,000 people who have passed away from the virus. But specifically today, I want to speak about how it's impacted our industry, what we're doing at the state legislative level to try to address the vast undersupply of housing in both purchase and rental and affordable and market rate. And also kind of briefly address some of the headwinds we're seeing right now. Obviously COVID is still an issue. It is hard to find people for jobs right now, although we seem to be coming out of that. And also for most of this year, supply costs for new development have been through the roof. As all of you probably know, the Valley has seen a massive influx of people that have decided to live less expensively than in San Francisco or Silicon Valley or Los Angeles. I know Bakersfield now has almost become a suburb of LA, which is incredible to think about because someone has to commute over and back through the Grapevine every day. But people have either purchased a home because it's more affordable there, or they've rented because the rent is so much less. And as a result, as Ian mentioned earlier, we've seen real tightening of the market. And so it's been a challenge. With that said, I kind of want to talk about 3 areas in which we've been working on at the state level. Accountability, dealing with red tape and supply. I'm going to be referring to notes because all of these assembly bills have numbers. If I were better with numbers, I'd be a bookie, not a lobbyist. So forgive me if I look down at my notes, but these numbers change all the time and the assembly bills are voluminous. One thing I want to point out really quickly too is that a number of these bills have been signed by the governor. A number of these bills are awaiting the governor's signature. He has until October 20th, I believe, to sign them. And some are what we call 2-year bills, which means they did not get out of their house of origin, either the assembly or the Senate, before the legislature adjourned for the year. When they come back in December, they will have until January 30th to get the ball rolling again. So just because it's a 2-year bill doesn't mean it's necessarily dead, but it means it'll be enrolled and chaptered in next year's session, not this. With that, I'm going to start with some of the issues that relate to homelessness and accountability. There is Assembly Bill 816 from Assemblymember David Hsu, and that essentially creates a new position within the state government. It's an inspector general for homeless issues. And the reason why this is necessary and why it's something that CEA supported, it's currently on the governor's desk for his signature, is that a lot of cities purport to follow the RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment Guidelines, as it relates to building numbers of units in the affordable space, in the low income space, in the tax credit space. Generally, the free market, the market rate tends to work itself out. They propose these numbers and then they never come close to meeting them. And that's part of the reason why we've seen these issues with supply. And this is more true in denser urban areas near the coast, again, San Francisco, LA, Silicon Valley, although we've begun to see a little bit of it in the Valley. You know, Sacramento, probably the most prominent, little in Fresno, because again, the influx of people coming from larger areas trying to save a little money on rent or in their monthly mortgage payment. What this does is it essentially has a mandate on cities and counties and their local governments to, by the end of 2029, so there's plenty of runway here, to have a plan and to begin implementing a plan to reduce homelessness by 90%. And I'm going to get into some other things later about this that discusses some of those methods, but I think it goes back to the video that we saw that, you know, there is this ladder of housing, so to speak. And yeah, you know, at the top, you have people who have home ownership and, you know, very stable housing. And at the bottom, you have the homelessness. And what we've seen in the last 18 months, particularly in large part because of the eviction moratorium, is that there hasn't been a whole lot of movement. People that are living in affordable aren't moving up to market rate, and people who are in market rate aren't moving up to purchasing. So it's really stagnated. And the impact has been that people trying to get a first rung of the ladder to get out of homelessness have been stuck there because all the steps above them on that ladder, no one's moving. So by getting the inspector general involved to start looking at these plans that the cities and the states are proposing to ensure that they're following through with their goals, it is one step. Another bill is AB 977, carried by Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel, and that would significantly strengthen the oversight of state-funded homelessness programs and evaluate the programs that receive state funding. Clearly, there's a lot of taxpayer money that's used for housing, particularly for low income, extremely low income, moderate income, homeless. And Assemblymember Gabriel's bill, also on Governor Newsom's desk, would create a little bit more accountability and ensure that money that is being spent by the state, which is essentially our money as taxpayers, is being invested wisely and that there's an actual return. And that some of this money isn't just going down a black hole, which unfortunately happens sometimes in bureaucracies. So I think it's encouraging that the state is trying to move the ball downfield. There's another bill I'll briefly mention. Ian mentioned I was a former chief of staff to a county supervisor. That county supervisor, who I've known since 1982 in high school, is now Assemblymember Carlos Villalpudua. And Carlos has a 2-year bill that would also create more accountability. His older brother, before he passed from substance abuse, had issues with housing. So this is an issue that's very near and dear to Carlos's heart. And he wants to see a lot more accountability and transparency, so we know where this money is going and these people that need the services are getting them. As it relates to permanent supportive housing, there are a couple of bills that we have sponsored that are 2-year bills that we're very excited about. One is SB Senate Bill 621 from Senator Susan Eggman from Stockton, my hometown. And that would allow motels and hotels to be converted to permanent housing as opposed to transient housing under 28 days through a ministerial process. And I'm going to quickly go into that for those of you who don't understand. Ministerial basically means it's something that can be done over the counter. Someone could come in, apply for this, and it's done by the person that they're dealing with at community development, as opposed to having to go through the process of getting a conditional use permit, having to go to the planning commission, and when that planning commission decision is appealed by whoever loses, to the city council or the board of supervisors. If any of you have ever watched the planning commission meeting, there are 2 things you'll know. One, it is a cure for insomnia. And second, if there are more than 4 people in the audience on any given day, it's because either A, there are people that are applying for a liquor license, or B, there are people that are applying for apartments. They want apartments to be built. And you have citizens coming out and saying, oh my God, there's a housing crisis. Yes, we need more apartments. We don't want them built anywhere near us. So with SB 621 being able to convert these motels and hotels that are already kind of built for the type of housing that permanent supportive housing answers to, this will be a very easy and quick fix. There are going to need to be some conversions as far as electrical and plumbing, but we can get people housed a lot more quickly in existing motels and hotels than we can building from the ground up, and the cost is substantially lower. So we're very hopeful that next year this will be taken up early by the Senate and passed quickly and signed by the governor. The other bill is SB 778 from Senator Becker. And this will clarify state law that allows building owners to convert the commercial portion of their mixed use building to residential using the state's ADU law. And where that comes in is, as we've seen with the pandemic, a lot of office buildings are empty and they're probably going to remain so. So if there is a way we can streamline this process, this is also a CAA sponsored bill that will allow the owners of these buildings to convert some of the square footage into residential. We want them to be able to do so. And the idea of living and working in the same place appeals to a lot of people. I know here in Fresno, there are a lot of lofts downtown where people live upstairs and work downstairs. So this is another way that is more of a turnkey as opposed to a ground up way of dealing with the housing issues and crisis and getting people housed quickly. So we're very hopeful, again, this being a 2-year bill, that it'll be taken up quickly next year. Moving on to more of the kind of the litigation and administration, there is another CAA sponsored bill that is wending its way through the Senate. That's AB 989 from Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel. And that would create a state administrative appeals process, and a developer could appeal a rejection of a project if the project has 10% of its units are affordable to extremely low families, or 20% of its units to low and extremely low income families. Essentially what that does is, for the non-ministerial process where they have to go through the planning commission and all these different legislative hoops like a trained seal, this puts them to the front of the line. And for developers, one of the biggest concerns they have is the regulatory burdens they face and how long it's going to take from the time they decide to build a project to the time they could break ground. And if the process takes a year or 16 or 18 months because of things like CUP, Planning Commission appeals, City Council appeals, and then CEQA, which I'll address in a minute, the California Environmental Quality Act, they get nervous because they don't know if I start now and in 18 months I begin lease up and we're in a recession, I'm going to go broke. So the idea that these people can move to the front of the line if they're going to build affordable for extremely low to low income families is a real boon to help these developers move this ball downfield and get these buildings built more quickly in areas where we don't have conversions from hotels and motels and multi-use. The next one is AB 571 from Assemblymember Chad Nays. And this is again where the cities kind of get involved in passively keeping these projects from getting built. AB 571 would prohibit affordable housing impact fees, inclusionary zoning fees, in lieu fees, and public benefit fees from being imposed on housing developments affordable units. And in English, what that means is a lot of cities say, yeah, we'll allow affordable housing, but we have all these fees attached to it, which makes the cost so prohibitively expensive. Building affordable doesn't pencil out for the developer. And the cities know this because they don't want affordable housing built. So by having this bill passed, which is on the governor's desk, it would prohibit cities from doing this, which would again streamline that process and get these units built more quickly and not have a city or a county use fees as a way to inhibit the building of these affordable units. Senator Scott Wiener out of San Francisco has, for the last several years, been advocating a number of bills, most of which unfortunately have not passed. There is one now that is on the governor's desk, that is SB 478, and that allows areas already zoned to allow multifamily housing for up to 10 units to accommodate this type of housing. And this is, generally speaking, more for urban areas that have transit hubs. There are a lot of areas in, particularly I think San Francisco, because it's such a high density city, but in parts of other areas of Los Angeles and Silicon Valley, again, those high density areas that have businesses that have gone out of business, that have empty land, that provide for housing, but there hasn't really been an incentive to build, and there hasn't been any law passed to, again, clear some of the hurdles to get these buildings built. And so what 478 proposes to do, and we hope the governor will sign it, it's a bill that CEA supported, will allow that to happen. So to give you an example, if you're looking at the South of Market area of San Francisco, if you have a retail store that has gone out of business, it's zoned for housing or mixed use, which means it can be housing and or commercial. If a developer wants to go in and buy that dirt and either convert the building or tear it down and build it, they can. And this makes that process easier. And what we're seeing is that particularly in urban areas, there is becoming a greater and greater influx of mixed use. So you may see retail, you may see commercial, you may see office, and you may see residential all in the same area, which in some places like New York City and Chicago have been there for decades, but it's kind of new for California. And it's the future, frankly, particularly in, again, high density areas. I think in the Valley, where land costs are still relatively low, and there are places to build horizontally rather than vertically, you're going to see less of this. But in areas where you see extreme needs of housing and crisis homeless numbers, again, San Francisco, a poster child for that, this is a bill we think that will address those issues. The last two I want to get to have been signed by the governor. They've gotten some press, some is accurate, some is inaccurate. So I want to address that quickly because I know I've got about 5 minutes. The first is SB 9. That was carried by Senate Leader Tony Adkins, who has been an incredible ally of the California Apartment Association. She is a senator from San Diego. And this allows a homeowner to create a duplex or subdivide their existing lot. A lot of the news articles that I've seen, particularly from websites with certain biases, have talked about this is the end of single family homes and this is the end of suburbs. Not true. Again, in places where there is room to build, you're going to see suburbs, you're going to see single family homes. But in areas where there is high density and there is a need for housing, and it makes financial sense for someone to subdivide a lot, this allows them to do it. What this does not do, and there are a lot of guardrails, I would recommend, if you have questions or concerns, to go onto the California State Senate website and actually look up SB 9. I'll be the first one to tell you that some of the legislative language can be convoluted, but it's worth learning about because some of the fear mongering has not been helpful, and it's been misguided. So we supported this legislation. We think it's going to be incredibly helpful for people that want to have higher density, up to fourplexes on dual lots. But it will still allow neighborhoods to maintain their character. You're not going to see, it makes no economic sense for a homeowner in almost any place in California, particularly, again, the Valley, particularly in Bakersfield, to rip down an existing home to build 2 duplexes. It just doesn't pencil out. But for places that have empty lots or places that have homes that are dilapidated, there are a lot of places here in Fresno. A couple of years ago, we passed a vacant and blighted building ordinance, still a hangover and a result from the housing crisis in 2008. So these houses that have been neglected, that are basically about ready to fall down, when they are raised, the owner can then put on a duplex, which again creates more housing and more opportunity and eases that pressure on supply. Because I've said this a million times, we've seen 2 schools of thought in this state. One, which CAA embraces, which is we need to build, build, build. We need supply to create demand. And you have the other side of the coin, which CAA opposes. And there have been, by the way, a ton of bills that we were able to kill in the last legislative session that would have been really harmful to our industry and not good for our state economy or the housing market. But I didn't want to get into that because I had a limited amount of time. But the other side says we need rent control, we need just cause evictions, we need all these protections because there's so little housing. We need to use price controls. And I can tell you, as someone who studied economics in college, that was another degree, but that's not important. Price controls do not work. They work in the short term. Historically, they have never worked. So that is why CAA has advocated and will continue to advocate for more supply moving forward. So that addresses SB 9. So I want to conclude with SB 10. Again, Senator Scott Wiener out of San Francisco. And this would authorize, not mandate, authorize local government to pass an ordinance to rezone any parcel for up to 10 units of residential density if the parcel is located in a transit-rich area, a jobs-rich area, or an urban infill site. Again, this speaks to large cities that have 2 things in common. One, a pretty robust mass transit system, and 2, a decaying urban core. So where there is now blight and they are working on revitalizing neighborhoods, that's where they'd be able to take, let's say, a duplex or a 4-plex and put it in a 10-unit apartment building. So you go from 4 units to 10, you have a new building that isn't blight, that doesn't have the issues of blight, and it helps revitalize the neighborhood, which is what we're seeing really all throughout California. And you're seeing a lot of the city's general plans address these issues as they're recognizing, particularly again, that was accelerated by the housing crisis, some of the decay in the urban core. I've reached my 20 minutes of speaking and I don't want to go over. I do want to conclude with the fact that CAA appreciates your membership. We appreciate your support. We understand, because we speak to our members every day, how difficult these last 18 months have been. We have been fighting as best we can your battles. We have worked well with the governor, who we think now that the recall is behind him, that kind of took up a little bit of his bandwidth there for a while, we'll be more focused on getting some of these priorities completed. And we're looking forward to the legislative session of next year. We already have a number of legislators we're working with that are carrying what we call intent language. They're not bills that have been fleshed out yet, but they're ideas that we have to increase housing supply and to ensure that there are no more onerous restrictions placed upon all of you who are doing such hard work on ensuring that people are housed. Thanks again, Ian and Marty and IPAC. You guys do great work. And I can only encourage all of you through the rest of this program to work with IPAC and the different homeless groups in your area to help these people get stake in the game to get on that ladder so they can begin to move up and have success in life. And thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Greg. That was some fantastic information. I also would like to recommend to everybody, especially if you're a CAA member, the recent webinar. Now the eviction moratorium is over. Now what? It's got a lot of great information about your rights and responsibilities as a landlord, as a property manager, and gives you a lot of more detailed information on some of the topics that Greg just covered. So again, thank you, Greg. I'm going to give you some applause.
Thanks, guys. Good being with you as always.
Yes, now it is time to turn our attention over to the Housing Choice Voucher Experience Panel. We've got two incredible people here. First, we have Carlos Sanchez. He is a project manager for Prosperity Advisors, LLC. He's an experienced landlord and real estate professional who has extensive experience renting to and working with voucher holders from the landlord side. And then we have Marty Sharples. She is the Housing Voucher Program Administrator for the Housing Authority of the County of Kern with over 20 years of experience with the Housing Choice Voucher Program. She understands everything about how this program works and what it takes to be successful. So welcome, both of you.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Hi, good morning.
Yes. So I think the way this is going to work for these discussions is we have a Q&A feature down at the bottom. If you have any questions for the panels, this one as well as the motel conversion panel, please type them in the chat. We are tight on time because it's a packed program, but I will try to answer all of them. But to get started, Marty, thank you for being here. Would you please provide an overview of the Housing Choice Voucher Program and how landlords can participate in it?
So the Housing Choice Voucher Program is a tenant-based rental assistance. So our participants come in with, we get them for various ways. In this instance, we have people that are coming through the coordinated entry system with homeless vouchers. Right now, I wanted to feature our emergency homeless voucher allocation that we have right now. We have 234 vouchers that we need to get people housed in the next few months. So that's our focus right now, but it works the same way as the regular Housing Choice Voucher Program. The participants come in, they get a voucher, they have to go out and look for a place to live. When they find a place to live, we do what's called a HQS inspection, which is a housing quality standards inspection. We make sure that the unit is habitable and decent, safe, and sanitary for our participant. Once it passes that inspection, then we start a contract with the landlord. And the housing contract does, we pay a portion of the person's rent, depending on their income and the payment standards for the unit. So if we have somebody that is lower income, we pay more of their housing assistance payment. If they have higher income, obviously we pay less. That contract is entered into with the landlord. The housing authority has a contract with the landlord, and the housing authority has a contract with the tenant, and then the tenant has a contract with the landlord. So our responsibility is to make sure that we're paying the rent, that the housing authority is upholding our end of the bargain, that we are making sure that the units are decent, safe, and sanitary, that our participant is following the rules according to the program. And then at the point where the landlord and the tenant have a responsibility, it comes into play as a regular landlord-tenant relationship. We're not the property management company. We're the entity providing the subsidy.
Excellent. I think the next question will be for Carlos. Let's see. Is the camera working here? I saw a comment in the chat that it's not on the speaker. Let's kind of shift these spotlights. So Carlos, from the landlord's perspective, how would you say the voucher program fits into your overall business strategy?
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Carlos Sanchez. Thank you for joining us. So I've been participating with the Housing Authority in the Dream Center in Bakersfield. I'm going on 3 years now. and it's just a fabulous program. We've had some bumps in the road, but we've been able to get through them. The people at the Dream Center has a fabulous team put together. So any little issues that we have, we're able to work through them. We have 4 2-bedroom apartments, townhouse style in Bakersfield, where we're housing 8 homeless youths. So it's a good feeling and it feels great to be participating. And I recommend it to any landlords out there who are not experienced with this program. Just know that there's a lot of help and there's a lot of guidance, and any questions you need, there's people there to answer them all day long. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos. I'm gonna add the spotlight here. So we got 2 speakers. All right. So we've spoken a little bit about the voucher program, but I understand there are several other options or support systems and programs that are available, like the Landlord Partnership Program. Could you just briefly explain how that program works and how it can benefit the landlords?
Sure. With our landlord partnership program, it's a program where if a landlord comes in and rents to one of our voucher holders that are experiencing homelessness, within the first 18 months, if there's an issue with the tenant tearing up the unit, either through when they've moved out and they've torn up the unit or done extensive damage, or it's in the middle of their tenancy and we've done an inspection and we noticed that they've done some damage to the unit, and we want to keep them housed by keeping the unit, by helping the landlord pay for those repairs. We have a program. It was supposed to end on the April of this year, but we still have funds, so it's still going. It's ongoing up until we don't have funds anymore. Which the good thing is that we haven't had to use it that often, so that's why we still have funds. But we'll pay up to $2,500 in damages for a unit. We also have for our emergency homeless vouchers that we have going on right now, we will pay a landlord $1,000 signing bonus if they come in and rent to one of our participants with an emergency housing voucher. They also will pay the security deposit up to $1,500, and then also those clients do have supportive services as well.
Excellent. And Carlos, how was your experience with some of these guarantees?
One thing I could say is that during the pandemic, there was a lot of people that were struggling, and partnering up with the Housing Authority and the Dream Center, that was one thing that I didn't have to experience as a landlord of not receiving rents. So all through the pandemic, all the rents were being paid on time. If there was any issues with any of the units, we were able to get some of that funding. It was just, it was just a wonderful program that's established by Bakersfield. And I have to say, I recommend it to any landlords who have not participated with the Housing Authority that you should.
Yeah, I'd like to say that. Obviously, we have experienced, we're doing the rent and utility assistance program, which is a whole nother subject, but we're dealing with landlords that have gone through months and months of not receiving their payments. But if you are one of our landlords with our programs, you are getting your rent. And that's a wonderful thing. So just wanted to put a plug in that way.
Yes.
Cool. So we've got a question from Anam in the chat. We have a tenant who's destroyed the unit. No idea if this is a voucher holder or not, but that's possible with any tenant. We have a tenant who's destroyed the unit, but still passed the annual inspection. How does the annual inspection usually work? What are the standards for that sort of inspection?
So the housing quality standards are actually minimum standards. We do encourage landlords to do their own inspections and make sure that the tenants are not tearing up the unit. It has to, what's in the unit has to work. So let's say if they broke a drawer, that wouldn't make it uninhabitable. It would be something that a landlord would have to talk to the tenant and get them to deal with. But the minimum standards are that they are decent, safe, and sanitary, that there's heating and cooling, that the running water there's water, there's sanitary facilities, that the bathroom works, those kinds of things. There's no leaks in the roof. The basic things like that. The cosmetic issues we will note, but it wouldn't not necessarily keep them from from passing an inspection. That would be something that's the landlord-tenant relationship, where they would have to deal with the tenant. You can charge a tenant if they've destroyed your unit. Also, if the tenant has done something that's destroyed the unit, that would be a habitability issue that wouldn't pass an inspection. We give the tenant 30 days to complete that repair, or to either work it out with the landlord. If they don't, then they are subject to losing their voucher. So we do hold them accountable if they do tear up a unit.
Cool. Carlos, how would you say your experience on this has worked for you? Have these programs helped kind of mitigate that risk of tenant damage to the unit? I know that's a common concern among landlords.
Yes, it has, especially with the support that comes with the participants, especially with the Dream Center. They have caseworkers, they have probation officers, they have a big support system. So they're on top of all the participants that are there. And if something does happen, as a landlord, I understand that financially that they're struggling. So we work out a payment program with them we'll repair it, but work out a payment program with them. And also we get help from the Dream Center, or if there's any questions that I have, I can call the Housing Authority and ask how we can litigate this and mediate everything to the best of everybody's. Thank you.
Awesome. So you've mentioned that you get paid regularly and on time. How would you say your experience with that has been? Has it been something that has really influenced your business practices?
Yes, it has, because it's phenomenal getting a direct deposit from the Housing Authority every month. And then it motivates me. Right now, currently, I have a couple more properties that I'm purchasing in Kern County, just so I can participate with the Housing Authority and the Dream Center. So it's motivated me more to buy more units and to lease them out to the Housing Authority, because of the partnership that's there. They just don't leave you out by yourself with no direction. So there's a big support system that I love, and that's motivating me to buy even more units in Bakersfield, just so I can rent them out to the Dream Center or Section 8 or the Housing Authority and participate with the voucher program.
Excellent. And then for Marty, on your end, in terms of administering the program, how could you explain a bit more about the process for what landlords need to do in order to get paid the rent on time, and any other requirements on their end?
So it is really pretty basic. Once a tenant comes with a voucher, they come with an owner's packet that they present to the owner. We just need basic information. We need to know who to pay, who owns the property. We have to prove it. Obviously, we want to make sure that it's your property and that you're not renting it. You're not scamming us with the bogus stuff. So we have to make sure that you're actually the landlord or the management agent. So we require a management agreement, a grant deed, something to verify that you are the actual owner or management company of the property. We ask for a W-9. We ask for your banking information. It's a basic packet we ask you to fill out. We need to know who pays the utilities. Is it the landlord or the tenant? Those kinds of things. Once that packet is filled out and turned back into us, we enter into a contract with the landlord. We let them know what the tenant portion is of the rent and what our portion is of the rent. Their responsibility also as a landlord is to collect that tenant portion. Like I said, we'll start the contract. A lot of times you don't get the payment like right away when you first start. So we pay on the 1st and the 15th. It depends on the time frame that the contract is signed when you'll get paid, but you'll get paid retroactively if it's starting in a different time frame. And we pay the rent every month. It comes in as a direct deposit. It goes into your bank account. And that's really what we require from the landlord. We want to make sure that they are good landlords. We do have a landlord liaison, and I'll put her information in the chat here in just a moment. That person is there to act as a liaison. Basically, if you're having issues with either us as the agency, maybe there's something we're not addressing, or you're having trouble getting hold of somebody, We have a landlord liaison that will track down what the problem is and make sure that that problem is resolved. She's also our customer service person, and so she her primary duties is to make sure that our landlords are taken care of. So that's really the basic it. You just make sure that the unit state that you're doing what you're supposed to do. Make sure that you're repairing items that need to be repaired, and be a good landlord. That's really all we request of the landlord, is just to make sure that they are they're upholding their end of the lease. There's a contract, and that that the tenant is doing the same. We also request that if the tenant is not upholding their end of the lease, that they let us know, so that we can maybe get involved and intervene with that tenant to try and get them to comply. Sometimes they don't understand what their responsibilities are. So we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to succeed in this program. I'll put the landlord liaison's information in right now.
Yeah, excellent. So we have a question from Kevin Bush in the chat. Do you have transitional housing clients? We are interested in providing group living services for homeless veterans. So is this more of a temporary program or more of a permanent one? And what sort of timeframes have you experienced with the voucher holders?
So we have only one that's a transitional housing program, and it's for emancipated homeless youth, and it's an 18-month program. We actually don't manage it, that property anymore. I used to manage that property, but now it's Covenant Community Services that manages that development. And it's an 18-month program. They have certain things they have to go through with the Covenant to make sure that they're good tenants. They have programs that they have to do, and then at the end of that program, if they have been successful, then we allow them a housing voucher to move on into permanent housing. That's the only one that we have. There are California Veterans Assistance Foundation has transitional programs that would probably be able to answer that question better than I can, but they have a pretty successful program.
Now, what sort of success rates, first for Carlos and then for Marty, what sort of success have you had with people staying in housing?
So I'll go first. So in the beginning of the first year when we started, it was a little bumpy because it was kind of new and trying to work out all the bugs. So the first year was probably a 90% success rate, but this last year and following, we're at 100% occupancy. So if somebody does move out, the Dream Center puts somebody else in there right away. So we don't have a big gap. It's less than 15 days to 30 days before they place somebody else in, because they already know that the person is moving out. So they have somebody lined up to put somebody else in their place. So the first year I had a 90% success rate, and then the other years are 100% occupancy rate.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, as you saw in the video at the beginning with my boss Heather Kimmel. She's wonderful, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, we have over a 90% success rate in having people successfully stay in the programs that have received a voucher through homelessness. It's probably a better success rate, I would say, than even just the normal off the, out of regular tenancy. You've got somebody off a waiting list that goes in, they rent an apartment. You really don't know what kind of tenant you're going to get at that point, but you do know when you're renting to one of our persons that have experienced homelessness that they will have all these services wrap around them. So they have a better success rate than just our regular voucher program.
Cool. So we've got another question from, it says Jessica. How can landlords participate? Is there a form on the website or other way to sign up?
Yes, we have on our Housing Authority website, currentha.org, and I'll put that in there as well. We have a place for landlords where you can list a unit. However, today, because of our summit, we are trying to get people to pledge units for our participants, and we are asking that you email Jose Meduena. He's my office assistant, and I'll put his information in the chat box as well. And you can email, let us know what your property is, what the whatever information that you have, and we will follow up with you after the summit and make sure that you are listed either on our website, or we'll put you on. It's called PAD Mission, which is a database for landlords that are willing to participate in the programs. And we'll also share your information with the housing navigators that are helping our participants find housing. So I'll put that information in there as well.
Cool. We got a couple questions about wait times. I think for Carlos,
Yes.
what sort of wait times have you experienced in terms of getting tenants into the units?
Well, because there's such a high demand to find housing, right now there is no wait time. There's a line of people waiting to get housed. So the Dream Center does a great job of making sure that they have them lined up, ready to go and moved in. And we've had a couple already success stories where a couple of the homeless youth that we've had already pretty much stepped up and got in their own place. So it's very satisfying to see them working towards a goal and going to school or working and trying to make a better life for themselves.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So from the housing authority's perspective, if a landlord is encountering a wait time in terms of getting somebody into the unit or signing up for the program, getting involved, what would be the best way for the landlord to, I guess, expedite that process? You know, is there somebody they can contact?
Yeah, I did put Nicoya's information in there. Nicoya Henry, she is our landlord liaison. We do try to get our our wait times for inspections. Usually, once we get a request, is usually between 3 and 4 days. So we try to get that done quickly. Once the unit is inspected, if the unit passes the inspection, then the tenant can actually move in the moment it passes the inspection. We'll start the contract that date, but we won't get all the paperwork done at that point. So like I said, you'll get paid back from the date that the unit passes the inspection. But if you are just experiencing anything that's, like I said, that wait time or something lagging or something that doesn't seem right, then you can absolutely get in touch with Nicoya, or you can call myself. You can, I get phone calls all the time, so you can give me a call. I am the administrator of the program, so I'll help track down whatever the issue is, and I'll put my information in the chat box as well.
Excellent. Just a second. So now there is, I've heard, a wait time for the clients who do receive the vouchers. We have a question from the Q&A. What efforts is the Housing Authority engaging in to address the long waiting list, I guess, for the number of available units?
This is a difficult for us because we do have a long wait list. And so I think probably the next panel with Mr. Perez is going to talk about us and the housing and creating more housing. But for our long wait list, it is difficult. We do try to get people off as quickly as possible. We are about to exhaust our regular wait list at this point, and we're going to open it up again, probably in the next few months. Instead of doing a wait list and where they're waiting for years and years, it would be, we're going to open it every year. So people would apply annually if they're still interested in the program. We're hoping that will help move people along quicker. So that's what we're doing right now.
Now, would you agree that housing supply is one of the big barriers for that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a huge issue. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's, I think one of the things we're trying to focus on today is how can we increase the supply? We'll be talking about that in the next panel. But Carlos, you mentioned that you're looking at purchasing a few more properties here in Kern to participate in the program.
Yes.
What do you look for in a property?
So since I'm going to be pretty much building them myself, and as a builder, there's it's kind of, there's no incentive of building 2 bedrooms or 1 bedrooms, but since I've been participating with the Housing Authority, I'm going to go ahead and build 2 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. Usually as a developer, we like to build as many rooms as we can. but there's a shortage of 1-bedrooms and there's a shortage of 2-bedrooms.
Absolutely.
As a developer, it costs me a little bit more to build a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, but because I love the way the system works with the housing authority and the Dream Center, it's motivated me and it's given me the incentive to go ahead and build it and work with the community so I can bring a supply and the lack of inventory that's available right now. So I recommend to any developers or any landlords that are out there that have 1-bedroom, 2-bedrooms, to please participate with the housing authority because there's a great need for it right now.
Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate that because we do.
Yes.
We definitely need that. Absolutely.
Cool. Let's see, we've got a question in the chat from Brandon Pope. If you are a nonprofit that helps house these people that have vouchers, what are some resources that they can use to get connected with either the landlords or even with future tenants?
And I did put in the chat that Brandon, you can reach out to me directly, but we have, through our Kern County, the Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative, I'm sorry, I want to call it the other thing. We have housing navigators with different agencies that are always helping to look for units to house our clients. So if you are interested, we would appreciate it if you would go ahead and either email myself or email Jose Meduena, and we will link you up with agencies and those kinds of things.
Excellent. We got a couple minutes left. Before we close out this panel, are there any, for Carlos, are there any sort of tips or tricks or any helpful advice for any future landlords considering getting involved in these programs?
There's a lot of information online, so that's a good place to start. And also there's a lot of information that the housing authority provides to landlords, and they also do landlord engagements to kind of teach landlords how to walk through the program step by step. So there's a lot of help out there so if a landlord thinks that they're going to be left out there alone, that's not how it goes. The housing authority and the Dream Center are great at showing you the way of how to do this because it's in everybody's best interest to house the homeless and get people off the street. And as a landlord as well, you have your partner is a great partner with the housing authority that you know you're going to get paid on time. And it's just a great incentive all around.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And then last question for Marty. So we've been talking a lot about the program here in Kern, but we have a number of people on from other parts of the state and even across the country. Can you explain a little bit about these programs in other areas? Are they available in other areas? How would people get involved there?
Absolutely. Most housing authorities have vouchers for people who are experiencing homelessness. So you can just reach out to your local housing authority and ask them. We do a lot of collaboration with the LA County and LA City housing authorities and Fresno, different Southern California housing authorities. This is an issue obviously everywhere. Most of the housing authorities have some sort of incentive programs, and they have programs for to try and help in this homelessness issue that we have here in the state of California. So any housing authority, you can just reach out to them and they will let you know what their programs are. They need landlords as much as we do.
Awesome. Let's see, I think we got time for one last question that came in from Imelda. Clients with vouchers expiring and are not able to find housing, do they have to restart the process?
So at the moment, because of the pandemic, we are issuing extensions up till, we can go all the way up till December 31st for people who have had vouchers like this entire year. Those waivers are probably going to be ending with HUD at the end of December, but we are giving extensions to people as much as we possibly can. And so if their vouchers do expire, unfortunately, they're off the program, off the wait list, but we're trying our best to make sure that they don't expire. We're trying to keep everybody with vouchers and housed.
Yeah, and I think that that really highlights the need for the landlord participation as well as for additional units so that we can get these people housed. Awesome.
Right.
Well, thank you both.
Good night.
Thank you,
Oh,
Carlos. And
sorry.
thank you,
Thank
Martin.
you,
Oh, did you
everybody.
have something?
Oh, I
Thank you.
just wanted to say, I see it looks like it's to the host and not to the everybody. It was Jessica was talking about the Dream Center website, and she put one on in the chat. I'm not sure which one it's the one on 18th Street. There are two Dream Centers, and they're the ones that deal with the emancipated foster youth or foster youth now. So I'm not sure if this is the one. I could probably try and click on it and see. No, the one that you put in the chat is not the Dream Center. I'll have to, it's on 18th Street. It's through the Kern County Superintendent of Schools is the one that runs that.
All right. Cool. Yeah, it can be a little bit confusing there because we do have the two separate Dream Centers in Bakersfield. Both of them do amazing work. One is more of a ministry, and that's the one on Union. And then we have the one that Carlos was speaking about, which is on 18th Street, that works with emancipated foster youth. So again,
Yes.
thank you both for joining us. I'm giving you a little
Thank
applause.
you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Carlos.
Awesome.
Okay.
So we're going to turn now to our motel conversion panel. Let me spotlight this and spotlight Stephen. So, we've spoken a little bit about the need for more housing units. And one of the excellent programs that's come along in the last couple of years has been the Project Home Key, which allows for some conversions of motels, but there's also been some private activity in that space as well. So we have two excellent speakers here to discuss this. We have Sanjeev Sunny Advyani. He is the owner of Synergy Real Estate. Sunny is a Bakersfield native who has grown his business out of a need to help others invest in the West Kern County area, starting with real estate investment services, then opening a property management company. And he most recently opened a licensed contract construction company. Sunny's goal is to help improve the city he lives in and provide investors with a start to finish platform to make investing in rehabilitation and redevelopment projects in the Bakersfield area easier and more streamlined. We are also joined by Stephen Perez. Stephen Perez is the executive director of the Housing Authority for the County of Kern. He's been in that role since 2005. During this time, the Housing Authority has developed over 1,500 units of affordable housing, enhanced resident services, significantly expanded permanent housing and services for the homeless, and developed new partnerships with community organizations. In 2016, Stephen was appointed executive director of Golden Empire Affordable Housing Incorporated and has led a period of significant growth for that organization. Stephen also serves on the board for several local organizations, including the Kern County Hospital Authority, Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative, Kern County Network for Children, and the Dust Bowl Historical Foundation. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yes. So let me pull up some questions here. All right. So you both have a couple of different projects in the motel conversion space. Stephen, would you like to explain a bit about your involvement with Project Home Key?
Sure. Well, we were able to take advantage of the first round of Project Home Key late last year. It was quite an experience for us. We were able to bring 150 units online in a period of about 3 months, which utilizing federal and state funding, that's light speed compared to a typical process, which can take several years. We acquired 2 motels, a multifamily property, and a condo, actually, totaling the 150 units. The properties were in different conditions. One of the motels was in quite poor shape that needed substantial rehab, and we're ultimately going to accomplish that in 2 phases. So we had an initial phase and then a second phase. The other motel was in better condition, and we were able to occupy completely within that initial time period. And so it was a good experience in the sense that we were able to bring 150 units online that didn't exist in the permanent housing space so quickly. And the state was actually incredibly flexible, far more flexible than they usually are in terms of the way they provided the funding and worked with us. But it was also very challenging for our team to try to take that on and accomplish that in such a short time period.
Cool. And then Sunny, can you tell us a bit about your projects?
Yeah, so right now we're actually working on a hotel that was vacant, boarded up. We're looking to basically get that hotel back up and or motel back up and running, and then eventually get that transitioned over to completely affordable housing units. And then we're working with another motel owner in downtown to do basically a similar thing, where they can actually maybe add a little bit of mixed use as well. So not only is it going to be housing, but then you will be able to go downstairs, have a bite to eat, something like that as well.
Excellent. So you're both coming at this from slightly different perspectives, one with housing authority, one with the private sector. How, for each of these projects, how have you handled the financing for them? Are there different programs that you're utilizing? Let's start with Stephen and then Sunny.
Sure, yeah, for the home key units I mentioned, we used 100% actually home key funds, which was actually CARES Act money that came from the federal government. Went and was allocated by the state. That paid for the acquisition cost as well as the rehab of the units, excluding the second phase that we're doing on one of the properties. We've done some other motel acquisitions too. We've got one going on right now through a affiliate nonprofit. And that property, we're actually using city public services and public safety and vital services, or PSVS funding, which is from a local 1% sales tax to finance the acquisition along with a bank loan. That's a small, about 25 unit development, former motel on 19th Street that is being converted into senior housing, kind of micro units for low-income seniors.
Excellent.
So on our side, we're definitely a little bit different. So we look at it more as investors. So if the numbers do work long term, then by all means. So our acquisition was recently done on Union. So that was a 24 unit motel. That one ends up being cash at this point, and then we are going to basically have the seller carry back some of that note as well to offset some of those construction costs that we have coming up. It is quite a bit of projects, so you do have to have a couple of people, and we do have a good investor group that has done a couple of these apartment buildings before. Nothing motel conversion per se, but we've kind of talked to everyone we need to, so everyone feels pretty comfortable there. On the other side, we're actually working with the current owner to restructure their building, if you will, for it to make more sense for kind of more affordable units, and then also try a different concept, right? Instead of having kind of just affordable housing surrounded by affordable housing, let's add some restaurant or bar or something in there that we can generate some revenue more for the owner as well, and provide a good service for the tenants that will be living in the building.
Cool. Let's see. So Stephen, you mentioned that it's a kind of a light speed process. Let's see. It says the camera's not on the speaker. Let's see. Let's try to. See, I'll do this for Stephen. Yeah. So. Okay, there we go. Cool. So you mentioned this is kind of a light speed process. How long, or what sort of time frame for the project management? From the initial concept to opening the units, how has that worked for you?
So for HomeKey, we applied for the funding the first part of July through the state. We were able to acquire actually most of the properties, 3 out of the 4 by October, and begin the rehab immediately. We'd already selected the general contractor, had the design work done on the rehab that needed to be completed within that initial 3 months, and then completed the rehab in early January. The deadline initially was to have to complete it by December 31st, but that was just not humanly possible. And fortunately, the state provided an extension. So it was completed by around the end of January, one of the motels, the one that didn't require a ton of rehab, we filled it up within 30 days and became 100% occupied. The other, we're leaving about half full in anticipation of the second phase of rehab, which will happen later this year. So all told, I mean, from beginning of application to 100% occupancy was 7 months. So again, typical time frame for affordable housing of pretty much any type is going to be more like 2 to 3 years. So that was great. I think the most stressful part, besides just the accelerated time frame, was trying to get the physical work done during the pandemic, within just a couple of months. And our contractors and staff did a wonderful job to try to expedite the work and make sure it happened within the time frame.
Excellent. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Sunny. Let's see. Same question, but from the private sector perspective, what does your time frame for a motel conversion look like?
So it can really depend, right? With the property that already is a motel, the thought process is to kind of slowly start transitioning some of those units. Basically, being that it is multi-level, we're looking at, okay, if we can take one level and start that transition, then we still have some kind of income coming in, and we can continue that transition through the rest of the building. So for that kind of thing, we're looking, it's not a quick time frame. I would say the fastest we've heard is about 6 months for some of the things we're looking to do. But in all reality, I would say at least 12 to 18 months in total. And then I would say kind of the same thing on the back end, from the time that we kind of start the process till we can start filling the building, about, that 12 to 18 month time frame is what we're looking at. But on the second building, the one that is vacant boarded, a lot of that is just the construction process as well, right? It's not just going through and, having to transition the use of the property, but it's also, in this case, the full electrical was stripped, and so on and so forth. And so you do have to go through, get permits, and that takes time as well.
Excellent. I've got a question for both of you. And again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to use the Q&A in the chat. Let's see, I'm gonna hopefully get both of you on the screen at the same time here. So a motel conversion is different from a regular apartment construction. What are some of those differences, and maybe some of the challenges that you've encountered? Start with Steve and then Sunny.
So I think one of the key differences is, certainly on an acquisition and even rehab cost basis, they're a lot cheaper per unit to do, right? A lot less expensive, just by nature, because they're smaller units and they're, consolidated typically into one building. But on the operational side, we found that they aren't necessarily less expensive to operate. In fact, sometimes can be more expensive on a per unit basis to operate, because the landlord or owner typically has to pay for the utility costs because they're master metered facilities. If you're able to, convert them into individual metered units, that's great, but that can be very difficult. So the ones we have are all master metered, and electricity costs can get really expensive in the summer, particularly when you've got individuals who aren't paying their own bill and just keep the thermostat in their unit down nice and cozy. So you just have to plan for that. And we found that the historical usage in the building is not always a good guide, because these properties that you're taking over are oftentimes very challenged properties that haven't been operating at 100% occupancy, haven't been operating under the normal kind of rules that you'd think housing should operate by. And so they're significantly understate sometimes the utility usage that'll actually be needed for the property. And then I think the other thing that is important to point out is these motel units, typically, if you're talking about converting into permanent supportive housing, they can't be turned into permanent supportive housing just by, replacing the flooring and painting and kind of dressing them up a bit. most motel rooms won't meet HQS standards. So somebody can't use a voucher in those units unless certain conversions are made. They have to have, according to HQS, there has to be a separate food preparation area, which includes a sink, a counter, a fridge, and at least a microwave. That you can't count the sink and counter in the bathroom as that food preparation area. So that most motel rooms don't have that already. And so that requires quite a bit of work. We also recommend that individuals that are considering motel conversions look at the ability of adding, some type of electric, burner units for heating up and cooking, not necessarily having to have an oven, but at least burner tops that individuals can use to cook beyond just a microwave. We plan on doing that definitely on our future ones because it just gives more options for the tenants. That can trigger other issues like fire sprinklers and other things that the city may or county may want you to add, which is a whole nother layer of complication, but definitely something to look at that's different than a typical apartment.
And Sunny, for you, how is developing a motel conversion different from developing apartments in your experience?
I would basically echo all of the same sentiment. So something I've learned is that, you have to follow the standards. The standards may not be as bad as they sound, but you do have to make changes, right? And that does require bringing in architects and having extra fees and making sure that if you're looking at this from an investor perspective, making sure that your numbers still do make sense, even with the excess costs. And then, the electricity is a big one because, if you've got a window AC unit or something like that, and these guys are just running them all the way down all the time, even that small unit's going to take up quite a bit of electricity times, 10 units, 15, 20, 30 units, right? And so somehow being able to offset that cost long-term, I think is very important. And also when you're buying these properties, especially from an investor's perspective, looking at, making the purchase where you are comfortable and making sure that you do have these incidentals plugged in because they are going to happen. It's not that, okay, yeah, we're going to come in under budget. I would love to meet the guy that can do that. But if we can plan for stuff like that and still have the number make sense, I mean, it's really good. And what we've seen is if you are planning on not only buying and renovating, but also holding the property long term, that really then can change the returns that you receive. And it benefits the investor quite a bit as well, because you are helping out the community. On top of that, you're earning a slightly higher return than you normally would. And yeah, there is a little bit more headache up front, but once everything is set up, it's pretty much like any other voucher property that you would have.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So speaking again to the costs, we have a question in the Q&A from Denise Caruzzi. Do you have a cost per unit for the acquisition and the rehab? And if maybe you could speak a bit more on how you structure your costs with the financing that you have available. So I think we could start with Sunny and then go to Stephen.
So for us, on average, so we have a payment standard through the Housing Authority, which makes it pretty simple for us, because then you can, speaking to the utilities as well, if we throw in those utilities and maybe bump up that rent a little bit, that offsets that cost that you might have. So that does help long term. But basically what we're looking at is, if we can purchase these units and be all into these units being completely rehabbed underneath the payment standard that the Housing Authority has, generally you can have a pretty decent return from that point moving forward. And also if you're looking at, these aren't necessarily Class A properties that are going to trade at, very, very low cap rates. So, you do have to kind of plan for, if you do want to exit the property, you are going to sell it a little bit higher cap rate than most other people. But I would say, right now, for example, a studio unit Housing Authority payment standard is $741 a month. If we can get that unit completed and finished for even $70,000 and we're getting $700 a month on it, for any investor, that's a pretty good return. And that's kind of what we try to hit.
Awesome.
Yeah, so for us, it's a little different calculation because we're looking at, okay, what are the available funding sources, and how much of what's the combination of the acquisition and rehab cost. And it varies dramatically. I mean, we've gotten units as, at 20,000 a unit where we've acquired them. We paid as high as 45,000 a unit to acquire them, and then the reason there's a significant variation is typically because of the condition of the units, right? So you pay less for the unit, you're going to pay more on the rehab side, and vice versa. And so we look at that number. We try not to, the way we're structuring them is we try not to have too much hard debt on the property, so that we can focus the operational revenue on the staffing and services that we want to provide on site. It's not easy to get the services funding nowadays to support this type of housing. Many vouchers holders come with services, which is great. Some persons who don't have vouchers don't have services linked to them. And so we find that we need to provide on-site services for them. So we have to incorporate that into our budget. So it's been a moving target. Construction costs have been increasing fairly significantly over the past 9 to 12 months. And unfortunately, we don't see that changing. So we've got a plan for that. And whatever we did last time, we need to add probably 20% to what it cost us last time, just because it's that much more expensive.
Cool, thank you. So what would you say are some of the warning signs to look out for when considering a motel conversion? I'll let whoever wants to go first.
For me, I would say it's a very cash intense business, especially from this side of the table. And so, you do want to make sure that you do plan for all of the things to go wrong. Because if you're doing that, then at least, maybe 80% of the things go wrong and you still right side up, right? But I would say that would be one of the biggest things. And for us as well, also looking to the future and seeing if this property is in a zone of improvement, or where we think that eventually the city will start improving around, or there will be a lot of high traffic, so we won't have the downside that other properties may have. The other thing we don't have is deed restrictions, so if we do end up running into a problem of, okay, well, this doesn't work for us anymore, we can just go back to something else and make that a profitable property.
So I'd say there's probably 3 things that come to mind that really are warning signs to look out for. One is if you're planning on using any state or federal funding, you want to avoid properties that have occupants that have stayed for 30 days or longer, because that basically triggers a state and federal relocation law. It becomes very expensive and difficult to relocate those existing persons who you would think are motel occupants, but under state and federal law, because they've been there 30 days or longer, they're considered tenants, even if they were in a motel. And it can be very difficult to relocate them if you can't accommodate them in the existing housing. What we found in some of these acquisitions is you'll have households of 5, 6, 7 people living in a 200 square foot motel room, and that doesn't meet our standards. And so they have to be relocated if they've been there for 30 days or longer. And again, it's the previous panel talked about the difficulty of people finding housing. They're having the same issue. And so it becomes a crazy process to complete. Second thing I think is just looking for warning signs for extensive criminal activity in and around the site, because that can be very expensive to address. One of the sites we acquired definitely met that criteria, and we've been spending $20,000 plus a month on armed security for the site to get rid of the bad actors and make sure they don't come back. And that doesn't happen overnight, because they keep coming back, because that's their place that used to be their base of operations. And so being prepared for that, if you're going to take on a site like that, be ready for the expense related to that. And then finally, I think NIMBY issues. So a lot of motel conversions, in order to turn it into permanent housing, It's not allowed in most zoning by right, so you have to get a CUP. And so you need to pay attention to, do you anticipate issues with neighbors in that conversion and them opposing what you're doing, because that will make your life difficult in trying to get the CUP.
Yes.
Very cool. So we got a couple minutes left in this panel. I want to close it out by asking, Sunny, you've got at least one project that is 100% of the tenants are voucher holders. And Stephen, you've spoken about using these properties for permanent supportive housing. Could you maybe discuss a little bit about how well the voucher system works with these types of conversions?
Oh, Stephen, I'll let you go first.
Sure. I mean, it's been great. I mean, I mentioned on the one property that was completed that, rehab finished. We don't have a phase 2. We were able to fill it in 30 days, all 50 units. Almost all of them were that had tenant-based vouchers. And that was faster than, we lease up most properties. So that worked out really well. I think, again, if you're moving a bunch of people in at one time, what we're able to do, we are the housing authority, right? So we are involved with the inspection side, but we still have to meet the same standards as any other entity. And so if you have a bunch of units you're moving at one time, we're able to coordinate with inspections to have them inspect all of them at one time. So you didn't have to, one off each inspection, and you can inspect literally the entire building. So that made the process much more streamlined and go more quickly than it might have. So we'll do the same thing for any private sector landlord that wants to open up a property and make them available for the voucher holders. We'll do the entire thing at one time, so you know exactly what you need to work on and don't. And so it's been a very good and smooth process. And as the panel before mentioned, the advantage with the vouchers is, you're getting the money.
Yeah, I mean, on my side, I would kind of, echo that sentiment as well. Getting our potential property inspected was a breeze. It was literally within 24 hours. We had an inspector out there. He came, he saw all of the units. He gave all of his, I guess, tricks of the trade, if you will, right? So he did give us a lot of tips on, if you do this, you don't have to do this. If you can do this, then you can, save a little bit. And so very, very, very good service there. So if you're thinking about that, I mean, I would definitely recommend reaching out. It's a very easy process. As far as the vouchers are concerned, we don't have our project up and running, so I can't really speak to that. But because we do have our property management company, we have a ton of voucher holders that we work with. And, basically, yeah, you do get your payments. The payments are always there. It's really nice. There's someone that you can talk to, and yeah, you have your hiccups here and there, but you're going to have your hiccups with anybody. And I think really the biggest factor is just making sure that you can manage it properly, and you're thinking about these risks ahead of time so you can mitigate them as well, right? Because I think what a lot of people get into is, oh yeah, I go buy a Class A property and I'm going to have the same exact experience here. Well, no, you're not inherently, right? And that's okay. But if we can plan for it, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's that and it's not that you're going to have every unit, torn apart. That's not even close to the case. But you have to learn how to kind of work the system a little bit, if you will, and communicate with people. It's a people-based business, and so if you work with other people well, and you work with the housing authority well, it's a great opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Stephen. There's a lot of really great information, and I think this is an exciting area in terms of increasing the housing supply and adding some of that what's called missing middle housing that is between single family housing and large multiplexes. So I want to thank you all for that. And now I'll introduce our keynote speaker to discuss that a little bit more. Let me remove these spotlights. We have now, spotlight for everyone. There we go. We have Tony Perez joining us today. I'm very happy to have him here. Tony Perez is the Director of Form-Based Coding for Opticos Design, which is a Bay Area-based consulting firm. He has 28 years of experience, including 12 as a public sector planner and the past 16 as a consulting professional writing form-based codes. Tony provides his clients with a sharp focus and broad perspective to ensure that development standards articulated are capable of implementing policies and delivering expected visions. Fluent in the language of urban design and architecture, Tony is able to extract maximum information and direction out of a vision while asking important questions of designers and stakeholders in the process. Leader in advocating in advancing the practice of form-based coding, Tony has authored or co-authored over 25 zoning codes and peer-reviewed or contributed to over 20 others, ranging in scale from small to citywide. As a Form-Based Codes Institute board member and instructor, he increasingly enjoys working with public sector planners across the US to train them in using and explaining form-based codes. He teaches form-based planning and coding to graduate and undergraduate students in major universities, and he is currently nearing completion of a case study book titled The Mexican Patio House. That sounds fantastic. And it analyzes 30 patio house buildings ranging from small urban houses to civic buildings to haciendas from central Mexico. Thank you, Tony, for joining us. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ian. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks for bearing through that long bio. I thought somebody sent you the short one, so sorry about that. Yeah, today I'd like to take about, I think, 20-25 minutes to talk to you about missing middle housing. I've got a presentation that walks you through what it is, how to make it happen, the kinds of barriers that you'll face, and the kinds of issues that are out there about it. And I just want to say, I was listening to that last panel on the conversions of motels, and I'd never heard any discussion about that, and really impressed by the work that at least the two people that I heard speaking, Sunny and Stephen, about motel conversion. It wasn't even on my radar. So thank you for that work. Hopefully something I say today might be able to help. So I'm going to share my screen now. Give me a second to do that. So let's see here, play from start, and should go dark there. Can you see that? Sounds like no. So give me a second here. Share screen. Yeah, it says my screen is sharing is disabled. Okay, here we go. Give me a second. And how about now?
Yeah, I got most of it.
Can you see the whole thing, or are you seeing all the slides?
Let's see. Showing like half of the screen.
Huh. Okay, let's see here. Try that. All right, let's try it again. How about that?
No, it's not really gone.
I don't know what's happening. This is usually how I do it.
Yeah, not sure either.
Okay, so let me try something else here. Let's see here. How about now?
Good. Looks like it's like, there we go.
Okay,
Awesome.
I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, so what is missing middle housing? The quickest way to describe it to someone is this this short sentence that we provide at the bottom. We sat around the table a few years ago and said, you know, we've got to give people a real simple way to say this because it's a big subject. And so we came up with house scale buildings with multiple units in walkable neighborhoods. And I'll talk about that as we go through it. But it's basically talking about the buildings that you probably know in some of the older neighborhoods in cities around California and the country. And it's everything that isn't a single family house or a mid to high rise apartment. And you can see that in the middle there. And so we call it missing because basically over the last 75, 80 years, we've really focused on producing single family houses and mid-rise or high-rise apartments. And as much as they're needed, that's really been the focus. And then lately, in the last 20 years or so, townhouses have really taken hold across the country. But by and large, after about 1940, 1950, the other types that we're going to be talking about today just stopped happening. And so we knew how to do this once. This is a page from a Sears catalog in the 20s. And you could literally order, in this case, a fourplex. Here are 3 versions of a fourplex. And it was coordinated to the lots that existed in most cities at that time. You can see at the bottom of the slide, there's a 40-foot wide lot, a 50-foot wide lot. And you didn't have to figure it out. It was designed and it came with all the parts, and you ordered it and came to your local railroad station and you hired a contractor, or I guess you could do it yourself. And you built this on your lot and it fit. And it was designed to fit. Pretty simple. But it's not that simple anymore, unfortunately, and that's why we're talking about it. So what we found across the country is basically 8 types, this palette I'm going to walk through in a minute here. And you might know them by different names in your region and your city, but at the end of the day, they boil down to these 8 types that I'm going to talk about. And I just want to also emphasize here that I'm talking about all 8 of these, but some of these cities that might be listening today might only use the lower half of this spectrum or the upper half of the spectrum, or a city the size of Bakersfield could easily use all of them. But I just want to say that they're not intended to go everywhere, even in the same city. Like, let's say a large city like Bakersfield, there are neighborhoods where the lower half makes sense, or the middle or the upper half, but it's rare that all of them will be going into one neighborhood. So let's talk through these. Quickly, the name of each of these is at the top left, you can see there. And then on the right, we provide information about the lots that we're showing on the screen, the variations of that lot. So this is a 55 by 100 foot lot. And the density that comes out by that lot size is 16 units per acre. Now, this is a really important distinction here. You'll see the term at the bottom there in the orange called resultant density. That's showing you the range of what I'm showing on the photograph, and maybe modifying the lot size a little bit based on what I saw on that street where I took this picture for each of these types. And that resultant density is different than what cities use. Cities use density as a regulation. What we're showing here is, regardless of what the density is, on the ground by the zoning map, this building at 55 by 100 foot lot with 2 units on it is 16 to the acre. And now look at the little row there in the middle. If you increase the lot depth by 50 feet, the density drops by 6 units. And so, depending on how big the lot is and all of that, it changes the density, and you'll see why that's a big point later. Going up the scale, there's the cousin of the duplex side by side, the duplex stack. So the side by side is literally one next to the other. The stacked is one on top of the other. They're flats. The cottage court, or you might know it as the bungalow court, it's a series of detached, small footprint, 1-story little cottages. You can see here around this garden, and then typically the back building is a 2, 3, or 4-plex. And in this case, that's a 3-plex at the end of that garden. But really nice way to increase intensity in the neighborhood without changing the scale. And that's the other thing you'll notice about all of these, especially like this one from Greenville, South Carolina. At first, I was in a neighborhood of houses, and then I looked and I saw 2 mailboxes, and I thought, oh, it's a duplex. And then I looked, and you can't see it, but behind that plant, there are 2 more mailboxes, and this is a fourplex in the neighborhood of houses. And then this is a favorite of mine. This is a 5-unit, what we call a multiplex small or a mansion. Some regions call it a mansion apartment. This is 5 units, and it's a Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Beautiful neighborhood of houses and a couple duplexes here and there. And you can see that on this 85 by 115 lot with 5 units, it's 22 the acre, but it feels like a house. And then its cousin, the multiplex large, this usually has 10, 12 units in it. It could have more. It could have 15, 16 units in it. And you're starting to get up in the higher density. But I don't even like to use the term higher density or lower density, because we become accustomed to a higher number being bad. And this is 22 or 27 units to the acre. This is 37 or 48, depending on how many units are in it, or how big the lot size is. This one, the neighborhood courtyard, there are 2 versions of this. There's the big 3 or 4 or 5-story version, but there's the missing middle version, which is 2 stories. And this one has 8 units in it. This happens to be in Santa Barbara. I just saw it the other day. And again, if you look at the lot size, you can vary that width or depth a little bit, and look how wildly the density changes. But the object doesn't. The building stays the same. And then townhouse, we showed 2 versions. There's a small, which is 3 to 4 units side by side, and 2 stories like this that fit nicely in the neighborhoods that have houses in them. And then the big one, this is upper missing middle, and we really recommend that this be used sparingly in certain locations, and not in 1 to 2 story neighborhoods. It's got its location, but it's usually away from lower intensity neighborhoods. And then lastly, here on the types, all these types that I'm showing you are 2 stories with an attic that accommodates basically a smaller 3rd story. So the volume of the roof can be used to accommodate a 3rd story of units, instead of like in the middle where that's a full 3rd story. The buildings on the left and right are what we typically call missing middle. So it's 2 stories to the eave, and then the 3rd story being in the roof volume and allowed to be used. And this is a huge point, because if your zoning code regulates by stories and says 2 stories max, the buildings on the left and the right can't use the roof volume for another 2 or 3 units that might otherwise be possible. So where does this work? Here's that example I was showing you in Greenville, South Carolina, and the photo on the left is what you're seeing on the right. And you can see that there are 1 unit, and then there's 2 units and 4 units. And that's how this street is. The beautiful street north of downtown. It's a bunch of houses, and every once in a while you'll see a 2-unit or 4-unit building. And the idea is that there are 2 places where missing middle really works. And so you'll see the number 1 on the map. Those are areas where it's 5-10 minutes walking distance from amenities. So let's say those amenities are transit, shopping, food, jobs, any combination of that, or just one of those. That's the first level. The second level is farther out, where you see the number 2, where it's, let's say, a 10-15 minute bike distance, or other amenities. So some people might say, well, I want to live near some amenities, but I don't want to live near a concentration of them, so I'm going to live in that area number 2 and have the ability for missing middle. So these are generally where we see missing middle really work well, when it's very near amenities that you can walk to and you don't need to drive everywhere. Can you drive? Yeah, you don't have to. And then some strategies. So the first one on the left there, you're just allowing missing middle to occur as property owners choose, and the market chooses. The second one on the top right is you say, no, we're we're going to maintain the single family neighborhood as it is, but on the busy side streets and the through streets, we might allow it on the end there, number 2. Number 3 says we have a higher intensity, say, multifamily corridor along the bottom of that diagram, but instead of letting the pressure of that multifamily corridor put pressure on those first lots around the corner down the side street of the neighborhood to change, let's let those first 2 lots have the option of changing to missing middle while retaining the single family character further down the block and into the neighborhood. And then number 4 is a commercial version of that. And then a couple of case studies here. I'm going to show you 5 examples of how missing middle is working in different parts of the country here. So this is a project we designed. It is under construction outside of Omaha, Nebraska, and it's called Prairie Queen. I think the website calls it Urban Waters. And there are a number of missing middle types being used by an apartment developer who came to our office and said, you know, I do apartments and I'm interested in doing apartments this way, without corridors, all net leasable area, and everything walk up, no elevators. And so this project is entirely that. There are no houses, it's all duplexes through courtyard buildings, and then you can see live work there on a little main street that's being built. I want to say it's something like 500 units in all once it's finished. And I would say it's about a fourth of the way. The next project is in Healdsburg, Northern California, and it's what we call a pocket neighborhood. So it's detached houses, small footprint houses, arranged around a series of gardens on the edge of a single family neighborhood. And then a couple of studies that are in the works. So this is something we just completed for the city of San Jose, a citywide study that they call Opportunity Housing. And they wanted to show their community and their city council the likelihood and the readiness of their parcels, their lots as they exist for missing middle housing. It's one thing to say from a policy perspective or even from a zoning perspective that you want to allow it. It's another to say, well, where would it actually work? Where could it fit? So we worked with for Strategic Economics. They were the prime consultant on this. And we analyzed physically where it could work, and they analyzed where it made economic sense. And you can see at the top right there, we came to some conclusions about what the minimum sizes of buildings and the number of units they needed to have in them, what were the thresholds in certain parcel sizes to make it all work. And you notice I'm not saying density. The density is an outcome, and I hope that's something you take away today. The density is an outcome, it's not a driver. Santa Rosa, California, we are in the process of working with them right now, and one of the first analyses we've done is to say, okay, similar analysis to San Jose, let's match up the missing middle palette, the building types that I was talking about, and look at your existing parcels and where it could physically make sense to realize missing middle. You don't want to put it out in the middle of nowhere. You don't want to put it in areas where there's nothing to walk to and you're just disrupting the small character of an area. You want to put it where people have access to services, like I was saying earlier, or transit. And so that's what this map shows, and you can see the chart there identifying for the city the number of lots by category that these building types work on. And you'll notice there, we categorize them by size, extra small, medium, and large. And there's a number associated with that, but we found that a lot of city zoning codes with the lot area that they require, it's not consistent with the reality of what a lot of buildings really need. There were a lot of good reasons for those numbers, but those numbers are often out of sync. And then currently we just were hired by the city of Modesto to do a similar study for them. And they were just about to update their housing element, and so they wanted this information to be prepared by us to inform that housing element, and they're updating their general plan as well. So we are just starting that process and encourage you to participate in that. So barriers. The first one is that maximum residential density is probably the biggest barrier. There are a lot of good buildings that could otherwise exist, but because of a number, they don't. Here's an example. The building on the left is bigger than you can even see on the screen. It keeps going on the left and on the right. And mathematically, it calculates 30 units per acre, and it's 3 stories. 49 units in that building. Look at the one on the right. It's a mansion apartment, missing middle type. And it's, you can see the width of it, and you can see the length of it down the lot there to the back. And yet it's 5 units in that building, and it's almost the exact same density as the one on the left. People have long arguments and conversations and meetings about what the right density is. And this is, you know, I've looked at this as well. And these two images are to say, yeah, density is important, but as an outcome, if you use it as a driver, and for example, you said, you showed the picture on the left, people said, you know what, we're comfortable with 20 to the acre, not 30. You just threw out the one on the right. So it's really hard to arrive at the right number. It's really better to arrive at the outcome that you need on a parcel size, and then let that number be the number. So why does it matter? The maximum density limits, and you know, they can be, in some communities, you'd be surprised. These numbers are half as much as they are on the screen. But we find that these numbers are typical in the higher end for cities like Bakersfield. A lot of cities, these numbers would easily be half of what you're seeing here. But the big thing about these numbers is that they were originally, in most cases, I don't know about Bakersfield, but in most cases, they were originally developed as a number to be applied to a large property, not an infill property, not an infill lot that's already subdivided. And that's why city or applicants and cities find themselves in a real situation when somebody comes in with a project and people say, well, wow, you know, it's exceeding our density limit and therefore it's wrong, it's bad. Wait a second, let's see what we're doing first, and then let's see if maybe the number is wrong and needs to be adjusted. In some cases it doesn't, but in most cases it does. And so one thing that can help you understand it's helped me understand in writing standards is understanding this distinction that there are 2 categories of buildings. Buildings on the left, which are as big as most or all of a block individually, and we call those block scale, and not because they're tall, not because they have a different design. It's because they occupy most of a lot or all of a block in some cases. And then they're attached. And then there are the buildings on the right that are detached and are as big as a small cottage up to a big house. And whether it's a church in a building that's the size of a big house, or it's a restaurant or a cafe or a 6-plex or a 10-plex, it doesn't matter. Those buildings have a different scale, and they have different setbacks, and they have different lot size needs. And so those are house scale buildings. Everything that I'm talking about today in the missing middle arena is in the house scale category. So that's important to know, because here's an example of an analysis we did for Greensboro, South Carolina, where they had a residential multifamily zone that technically allows 18 units per acre. But when they realized that that zoning district had been applied to parcels 60 feet wide, that on the map and in a spreadsheet were expected to produce housing, they realized they weren't realizing housing, multifamily housing, because after you apply the setback requirements of 25 feet, you couldn't get anything buildable. And the 25-foot side setback requirement is typical in many cities, and it's for the purpose of buffering big projects from their neighbors. But when you have an infill property, that's really a big hindrance. And so what we try to do is say, hey, well, what would fit on that lot regardless of the existing zoning and would fit in with the neighboring houses and character? And we found that in this case, that 5-unit building I was showing you earlier would easily fit on this property and meet the maximum 18 to the acre. But you have to get rid of the 25-foot wide setback. Minimum unit size requirements are also a barrier. There's a lot of understandable reasons why cities use minimum unit size, but if you're trying to offer more housing, unit size maximums are not a way to do that. And listening to the previous panel about motel conversions, I mean, that's a great example of small units. That's super small units. So we usually try to hit, below 1,000 or an average of 1,000, to try and make those unit sizes come down, both for affordability and also to keep the building size down. As soon as the unit size grows, the building size will grow. And then lastly, parking. We find that parking, again, a lot of these standards that we are all dealing with are from another era where land was plentiful and you could have a big giant project and you could just put everything in there. But when you start looking at infill lots, it's a different situation. So the scenario on the left is each your neighbor to provide the parking that the code requires. The scenario on the right is park it on site. So every one of those lots has the parking that its units need on its lot and not next door. Implementing missing middle, there, I'm going to go through four general approaches, and then we can talk about more. But there's the, we don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of time. I think we have some quick fixes, and so you can literally do this, and you can go and look at the kind of things that are in the way of the kinds of outcomes that you want, and literally go with a targeted text amendment. Or you could do like Medford, Oregon. We did a few years ago with them. They said, we don't have the political will to change our base zoning where we think missing middle will work, but why don't we come up with a map that says, here's where missing middle would be allowed, and provide standards, simple standards. These are a set of 2-page standards for those areas. So you can see there, I don't know if you can see it on the page, but an MFR 15 or 20 or 30 zone, there's information there, and it says that depending on which zone you're in, here is the standard that you can use for missing middle housing. And you have choices. There are 2 choices on the page here, cottage court or fourplex, but I think we gave them like 6 or 7 that would work there. So this is level 2. Level 3 is like this example in Novato, California, where the city said, the R20 zoning is not working for us. It isn't allowing the 20 units per acre that the general plan allows, and we are not realizing the housing that we thought we'd realize here. So we prepared a replacement zone in this case, and it's being applied to that area and only that area. So if you're a smaller city and you say, we don't want to reinvent anything, we don't want to cast this over a broad area, we just want to do a targeted area, this is what Novato did. Or the level 4 is the robust set of standards, which California is now requiring objective standards for certain types of projects that request permit streamlining protection under state law. And so what we find is that many communities, while they see that they need to comply with the law to provide objective standards and provide the developer a clear path to approval without discretionary review, many of those same cities are saying, there are cases where we might just apply these as the new base zoning and make it easier all around, and not just wait for that permanent streamlining that project. So, I showed these in more, or from low to highest effort and cost, just for general purposes. So again, last slide, the missing middle palette is these 8 types. I think a city like Bakersfield could totally use all of them. But again, I want to stress very clearly, it's unlikely that all of them would happen in one neighborhood. It's more likely that a handful, say on the upper end in certain neighborhoods, some in the middle, and some in the lower end in other neighborhoods. It just depends where you are. So really important to take that away. Anyway, thank you. Look forward to your questions.
Is that all right? Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate the details that you put in here. Rogelio Martinez says, great presentation. So we've had a couple of comments in the chat pointing out these types, some of them already exist in Bakersfield, but they're a little bit more in, I guess, older neighborhoods. How would you say the historical development has changed? Why were we able to do them previously, but not so much now?
Well, yeah.
That's a big question. Really.
Yeah, we were able to do them previously because there weren't density limits preventing them. People saw that, and the other reason was that multifamily development, at least in the areas where you see these, had not turned into the big, efficient 100 unit and plus kind of development. It was still at the scale of houses. And so that's why these missing middle types are all house scale, because they were fitting in with houses next door and down the street. And so as concerns about multifamily housing developed over the years, whether through infrastructure or bad management or whatever it was, cities started clamping down on multifamily development and lumped it all together. And so one of the points we try to make is to say, we have to call it multifamily because that's how cities look at it, but it's not multifamily as you know it. It's multifamily of a more articulated category.
Awesome. Lions asks, would you go by developing? How would you go by developing a 4 3/4 acre property for multifamily house in rural areas? So I guess how can missing middle be integrated into the rural areas? We have a lot of those in the San Joaquin Valley here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, missing middle works by attaching itself to an amenity, and that amenity might be that corner little Main Street, one block. It might be that transit stop. It might be near the train station. Whatever it is in your town. And I understand the Central Valley. There are a lot of small towns. I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a town of 1,200, so I saw missing middle work there, and it was all pretty close to the main street, around the corner or down the street. So don't force it, but that's where it wants to go. It doesn't. I don't think you'll serve anybody by having available land in the middle of nowhere that somebody says, do a missing middle project here. You shouldn't do it there.
Good information. So we have from Chris Leon in the chat. With a city that needs to allocate more low-income housing, what can cities do to entice developers to, develop that kind of missing middle housing?
Well, again, the state is forcing. I shouldn't say forcing. The state is requiring communities. When certain affordable projects come forward and they meet those requirements in state law, then the state is requiring that no discretion be allowed and that they be allowed ministerially. So whatever objective standards you have on the books is all you can apply. You can't take it to meetings and say, we're not sure we like it. And like I said in the last slide, the cities are starting to see the benefit of having clear standards for everyone. They don't have to rethink every project every day. And certain size projects, maybe you do want to think about it because there's too much to try and put into an ordinance. But the projects that you think you can accept, and the neighbors can accept, and you work with them to figure those numbers out. Put that on paper, and it's a huge savings to the applicants that they don't have to spend. As Stephen was saying when I just jumped on that panel, I heard the discussion about taking 2 to 3 years for a project. That's crazy. So if you can get that less than a year in California, or 7 months, as he was saying, for the motel conversion project. If you could do the same thing for fourplex, you'd be doing a lot for everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tony, for your presentation. We're running up on the time here. Let's see, one last request. Can you make me the host again so I can share Arlena's screen when she comes on? But in the meantime, I really want to recommend to everybody the book Missing Middle Housing. It's getting blurred out by the blur, but it's a great book. It covers all these concepts, the different types of missing middle housing in a lot more detail than the presentation today. It's by Daniel Perez, also of Opticos Design, and really is one of my favorites right now. So again, thank you, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to say, Ian, that sometimes people think I wrote that book because I'm making this presentation, but Dan Perez wrote that, and Dan founded Opticos. I work for Dan.
Yes.
So just want to be clear about that.
Oh, final question from Lions. How can people get in contact with you if they want to learn more?
My email was on the slide, but I'm happy to say it out loud. Tony.Perez@opticosdesign.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Really good presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Very cool. All right, so I'm gonna move that spotlight. So now coming up, we're gonna be closing out with some comments from one of my favorite people in town. This is Arlena Waller. Arlena is the founder and CEO of She Power Leadership Academy, as well as the founder of the Circle for Life Development Foundation and the MLK Community Initiative. She is an author of numerous books, as well as a professional speaker and leadership consultant, and has presented for universities, community organizations, and Fortune 500 companies. Waller serves on multiple executive boards, including the Forbes Coaches Council, the Black CEO Women's Council, the Kern County Sheriff's Advisory Council, and many more. She is recipient of multiple awards. There's literally too many here to list. So I'm just gonna say that she, for all y'all business people, she was nominated for the California Small Business Development Center Small Business of the Year Award, so she knows what she's talking about. Arlena, thank you for joining us.
And thank you so much. And by the way, you're one of my favorite people too. I love people who color outside the lines. And I think that's what this program is about, doing things differently and kind of coloring outside the lines and really being there for those who need us in a way that historically just hasn't happened. Thank you, Tony Perez, for a phenomenal presentation. It was invigorating to see all the different ways in which our landlords, our developers, our real estate professionals can really serve the most vulnerable population who needs us more now than ever before. I'm here to make an ask to the landlords. If you are not a part of this program, if you do not have a current relationship with the Housing Authority, I'm asking you to lean in. I think Carlos shared how it works, how the support is in place. I know that traditionally the conversation is, will my property get tore up? That could happen if you have someone who works for a, for corporate, for our largest university, it could happen. But here's the difference in what I heard today, is you have support when that happens. I think Marty talked about 234 vouchers are available. If you have an empty unit, lean into the Housing Authority, take advantage of one of those vouchers, help get someone off the street and give them a home. We know that having a stable housing is critically important to closing our economic gap. And when our economic gap is closed, we all win. When our homeless population increase, it hurts all of us, not just those who are out on the streets on a cold night or sitting outside on the sidewalk on 100+ degree weather. They're not the only ones suffering, we all suffer. So if you are a landlord and you have an empty unit, lean in. And I think we talked about the $2,500 in damages. It could happen with anyone. You have $2,500 that's available. Whereas if you're not leaning with this program, you don't have that available. We talked about the $1,000 signing bonus. In addition to that, up to $500, up to $1,500 of security deposit. This is really a win-win program for you, the landlord, and the tenant, and the community. As I looked over the work that you all have been doing, the Housing Authority, Ian's, and just different ones who are here, it is innovative. And that's how we're going to change the dynamics of our community, by being innovative. And I think with landlords leading in, this is a time to be innovative and to rent differently and to get different outcomes for our community. It takes all of us. So if you have not, have the conversation. I think Carlos talked about earlier, one of the other gentlemen, maybe it was Stephen Veltz, talked about they are continually educated and engaging landlords. There's a lot of things moving. To be a partner with the Kern Housing Authority means that you're going to get the information as they get the information. And so it really positions you to be a better landlord and to ensure that your residents are better taken care of. This program gives everyone an opportunity to be successful. I'm asking you to not just think about yourself, but to think about our community. We all have to lean in and do things a little bit different sometimes so that we all can win together. Again, if you have an empty available unit, contact the Housing Authority. Actually, the email is put in the chat. Copy that email, send a message, have a conversation. Let's work together and fill in your residents, and fill in your empty unit with residents, and getting more homeless population, veteran population, and especially our youth in safe, affordable housing. I know we all can do it. Thank you, Ian, for the opportunity to share some words. And thank you for being a part of today. I completely enjoyed Tony Perez and all the other panelists. And I'm looking forward to doing more where I could do more. Join in, don't hesitate, send the email today. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Arlena. That was very inspirational. With that, I think our program is over for today. So to summarize, there's two ways you can participate. One is if you have existing units, and I realize vacancies are really low, so maybe you don't. But if you do have existing units or units that are coming available, please email your local housing authority. For Kern County, that email is here in the chat, jmaduena@kernha.org. That's Jose. You can email him. The other way you can get involved is, as we've been speaking about on this whole program, we do need more units developed that are oriented around vouchers, that are oriented around our most vulnerable populations, not just here in Kern, but in the state of California. And so I think we've explored some of the solutions to that today, talking about missing middle housing, talking about the motel conversions, as well as, how as a landlord you can participate in, really, like I said at the beginning of this, not just benefit the community, benefit your business as well. So thank you all for being here. I've got one last thing to share. It's another video, and this is from The Way Home, which is a documentary series exploring homelessness in California, and it spotlights some of the solutions we found here in Bakersfield. So I am going to leave the chat open while this video is playing. It's about 10 minutes long. If you need to go get lunch, go right ahead, but we'll have the chat still open if you have any additional questions. Thank you all, and I really appreciate everybody being here.
it's like to sleep outside. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to eat out of a dumpster. Having been homeless, I think the one thing I remember most was being invisible. You don't have a name. Nobody wants to look you in the eye. They want to walk by you as quickly as possible. I was arrested in 2006. My daughter was placed in foster care, and I lived on the river for a couple of years. I met some people from a church called the Bridge Bible Church. These women came alongside me and mentored me. People had hope for me when I didn't have hope for myself. And went into a recovery program, got sober. So I know what it's like to be on the streets, but I also know what it's like to be invested in. I'm a firm believer it's our job to invest in others. Now, I work for Flood Ministries. I'm a housing case manager. Our focus is linking folks that are experiencing homelessness to resources within the community, mental health services, housing, Medi-Cal, food stamps. Our ultimate goal is to get them into housing. We're going to go find Lynn Edlin. I had went yesterday to look for him in the area he generally stays in, and I talked to one of the shop owners that's kind of befriended Lynn, and he said there was a little scuffle out front of some sort, that Lynn was no longer staying there. So we're gonna go try to find him, just try to figure out where he's gonna stay today. And there he is right there. Hey, Lynn. You're still here, yay! Thank you for not running on. Thank you. I knew Lynn when I was homeless on the streets, and we became friends. He has mental illness, and I believe often self-medicates with some alcohol. Okay, so if I can get somebody over here with a truck, can we put some of this stuff in storage?
Most of it, in fact, because then it would be
Awesome job. Just, I want to say, can't seem to catch a break.
basically.
Okay, let me go get my phone and call the office and see if we can't get the truck over here, all right? Okay.
Over at the other end, right there. So what woke me up was sprinkler. Okay, so I jumped off and went over there and kind of blocked it while I was doing it.
Lift it up and over. You know, I've known him for so many years, and I'm watching him shrink both physically and mentally. And it's breaking my heart. Thank you. I'll find you.
Built for Zero is a collaborative of communities across the country who've all made a shared commitment to end homelessness. But the benefit of Built for Zero is that all of these communities are doing that together and can learn across the collaborative. As some communities are making gains and some are struggling, there's an opportunity for peer sharing across the network. It's very hard to address needs around substance abuse or behavioral health or physical health before you have a place to live. And so the answer is to move people into housing first and then wrap all the services those individuals would need to support them successfully staying housed.
In Kern County, it was the first time we'd ever tried housing first. It was the first time we tried an assessment tool and prioritizing people. It was very new and foreign to us, but it worked. And those people remained housed. And they remained housed for a very long time. And most of them are still housed today. We have a 97% success rate in that model.
The relationships and the partnership on the ground in communities are essential in this process because they are working to develop and implement systems or processes that really work for individuals experiencing homelessness.
I feel that the efforts being made in Kern County to end homelessness are phenomenal. Everybody's on board, It's not just like one agency trying, it's all agencies. This is an all hands on deck effort.
The Landlord Summit in Bakersfield is important. It really takes the partnership of all stakeholders across the community to end homelessness, specifically landlords who have access to units where people can be housed.
Housing doesn't magically give you security and stability, right? But we think it's the lever that we can pull to get people there faster than anything else. But the brass tack says, if housing ends homelessness, you own the housing. The ball is in your court to figure out what are the specific actions that you can take to clear the path for people experiencing homelessness.
There's some housing on your table that looks like this. If you're a landlord or you know somebody or you can connect us with a landlord, put down the information on here. And I want you to take your house and I want you to put it over here on the key. Because what are we doing? We're gonna put keys in the hands of our clients. So it's up to you now. Thank you.
We did the call to action, and it was a terrifying moment. We have no idea if any landlords are going to get up out of their seats. And landlords got up. And there was a line of people holding these little house cutouts in their hands, ready to commit those units to homeless individuals. And it was a very emotional moment.
I see a new passion that has ignited in this community.
When you participate in these programs, it touches your heart. You get to feel proud as a landlord, like saying, hey, I'm making a change. I'm providing to the community, and it's helping everybody out, and you get to see it, and it's just a great experience overall.
Ending chronic homelessness in Bakersfield, or actually Kern County, which is much larger geography. It's not only a big deal for the people who live in Kern County, but it also acts as a model for what does it take across a large area in California to drive population level reductions. And we're seeing communities everywhere from a community of 500,000 to a community of 4 million being able to do that. I think the first challenge is actually believability, whether people believe it's possible and whether there's will to do it.
We've located Lynn a standalone home.
What have you been cooking since you've been in your new house?
Well, mostly I've been cooking eggs and meat.
Got your rent paid? Got all that good stuff done?
Water's in my name and PG&E.
PG&E's in your name?
Yeah, right.
That should feel awesome. You should feel amazing.
Oh, I do. I feel really, I'm grateful. He's a shark that caught a shark. So I put him up on the wall.
What are your hopes and your dreams now that you're in?
All I've asked is that I fall in love and that someone fall in love with me one more time.
That's a good dream.
Yeah.
We're hoping that will be his forever home.
All right. So again, thank you all for being here. If I should have mentioned before, but if you do want to watch that documentary in its entirety, all 4 episodes of season 1, that is available on Amazon Prime and Apple TV, as well as I think a few other outlets. You can also Google the Way Home documentary, and that'll take you to a website with more information on it and how you can access it. I did see that a season 2 is in the works, so more content to come. But I think the main point is As you saw, you all can make the difference here, either by renting existing units or developing new units that are available to housing voucher holders. It's really, it's got a strong success rate. It's great for your business. It's great for the community. And with that, I will bid you adieu. Thank you all for joining us. Good times, y'all. Thanks.